Honestly, this whole situation feels like a textbook example of irony coming back around in real time. Not long after Remy Ma publicly blamed Papoose for slowing down their divorce, the very person she moved on with ended up flipping the script on her. While Remy had been hyping Eazy up as this incredible new chapter in her life, calling him the best partner she'd had in ages, rumors started swirling that he had already lost interest and shifted his attention elsewhere. At first, their relationship thrived off public fascination. Social media couldn't get enough of them, and Eazy was clearly enjoying the attention that came with being attached to a major name. But once the buzz died down and the spotlight faded, it became obvious that the relationship wasn't translating into long-term momentum for him, personally or professionally. Allegedly, he pulled back, quietly moved on, and left Remy looking exposed in the process. What makes it even more awkward is how short-lived the whole thing was. The relationship barely had time to settle before it started unraveling, especially after Remy went into full defense mode to justify it. Within the Black community, loyalty isn't just valued, it's deeply respected. People don't forget who stood 10 toes down when things were rough. So when everyone looked at Remy and Papoose's history, him holding her down through prison time, it felt like an unbreakable bond. Most folks believed they were solid for life. That's why the 2022 revelations hit so hard. When news broke that Remy had been involved with Eazy, the backlash was immediate and intense. Overnight, a relationship once celebrated as a symbol of Black love turned into a public lesson on betrayal. Remy went from being admired to being questioned for abandoning a man who had proven his loyalty when it mattered most. Still, Remy has never been the type to stay silent while being dragged. She pushed back, explaining that she finally chose herself instead of staying in a marriage just to uphold a public image. She accused Papoose of being involved with another woman as well, claiming their marriage had been broken long before the public ever caught on. Papoose, meanwhile, insisted that he didn't move on until he discovered the truth about Remy and Eazy. Initially, he believed their connection was strictly business and even had no issue with Eazy, until he realized he had been played. That realization led to a confrontation that reportedly escalated beyond words. As Remy and Papoose aired out deeply personal issues online, things the public probably never needed access to, Eazy was quietly benefiting from the chaos. He may have already had a name within his own circles, but being linked to Remy took him from relatively low-key to internet famous almost overnight. And now, with the attention gone and the relationship seemingly over, the fallout has landed squarely where it started, right back on Remy. He wasted no time stepping into the spotlight. Suddenly, he was everywhere, doing interviews, confidently declaring that he wasn't some side storyline in Remy's life but her actual partner. That visibility worked in his favor. People who might have scrolled past his battles before were now locked in, especially when his lyrics started hinting at the messy triangle between himself, Remy, and Papoose. The drama gave his performances extra weight, and the audience ate it up. Remy didn't exactly slow that momentum down either. She openly boosted him, drawing even more attention his way, particularly after she made comments suggesting Papoose wasn't financially stable and needed a woman to hold him down, while framing Eazy as independent, established, and not relying on her wallet to survive. In her mind, she was justifying her choice. In reality, she was unknowingly polishing Eazy's platform even more. The uncomfortable truth is that while Remy was publicly defending their relationship, Eazy was allegedly already planning his exit. A leaked audio later painted a very different picture of where his head was at. In it, he reportedly talked about being ready to move on the moment things started feeling off, making sure he squeezed every possible dollar and opportunity out of the situation first. Reality TV deals, extra exposure, whatever he could get, he wanted it. One thing was clear, he had no intention of leaving empty-handed. Looking back, it shouldn't have shocked anyone. People had already been saying the relationship felt off, transactional even. Some were questioning why Remy would go all in on what looked like a slightly rebranded version of what she already had with Papoose. At that point, many felt reconciliation might have made more sense. But Remy stayed firm, insisting she was done for good. Now, it seems like walking away earlier might have saved her from being pulled into attention she never asked for. The hardest part is the contrast. While Remy was publicly speaking with conviction, talking about loyalty, commitment, and a love that survived scrutiny, Eazy was allegedly living a completely different reality behind closed doors. As she stood 10 toes down, he was reportedly entertaining multiple women at the same time. And these weren't anonymous, far-removed situations. The women were close enough to her orbit to make the betrayal hit deeper. One of them was allegedly his ex, someone with shared history, lingering emotions, and unfinished chapters. According to behind-the-scenes chatter, she's the one who let the truth slip. Whether it was intentional or not, it exposed that she and Eazy were still involved during the same period Remy was loudly defending him. This wasn't described as a one-time slip-up either, but something ongoing, long enough for conversations, jokes, and proof to exist. Messages reportedly showed her casually referencing Remy, even laughing about how furious she'd be if she ever found out. That detail alone suggests deception wasn't just present, it was comfortable. The second woman reportedly involved was an artist connected to Eazy's own league, someone whose career intersected with his influence. That adds another unsettling layer. Now it's not just about infidelity, but blurred lines, authority, and trust within a professional space. Alleged screenshots showed conversations acknowledging that Remy and Eazy worked closely, that Remy personally knew this woman, and that if the truth ever came out, it would explode. The casual tone, jokes, warnings, mentions of Remy going off, made it clear everyone knew exactly how wrong it was and chose to continue anyway. What spoke the loudest, though, was Eazy's response, or lack of one. When these accusations started circulating, there was no urgency to deny them. No attempt to clarify, defend, or correct the narrative. The word going around is that he simply didn't care whether Remy found out. That silence said more than any statement could. It made it seem like loyalty was never a priority, or at least not something he felt bound to once the attention began fading. Things took an even darker turn when Papoose entered the conversation again. During their heated exchanges, he allegedly claimed that Eazy possessed explicit videos and receipts involving Remy and was using them as leverage, essentially keeping her locked into the relationship for image, clout, and control. That allegation reframed everything. What once looked like unwavering devotion suddenly felt like pressure and manipulation. The idea that private moments could be weaponized to force someone to stay shook a lot of people watching from the outside, because it suggested the relationship may never have been as mutual, or as safe, as it appeared. Remy didn't let that version of events sit uncontested. She shut it down forcefully, insisting that Papoose was projecting his own feelings and frustrations onto the situation. According to her, there was no manipulation, no threats, no leverage being held over her head. She maintained that her relationship was a conscious choice, entered freely, and that much of the noise surrounding it was being fueled by outsiders with motives of their own. But as more accusations of infidelity continued to surface, her denials became harder to separate from the growing unease. Even without blackmail in the equation, the repeated patterns being described made it difficult to believe the relationship was rooted in transparency or mutual care. What people couldn't ignore was the imbalance. Remy showed up loudly and emotionally. She spoke with passion, defended her partner in public, and made it clear she was standing firm despite criticism. On the other side, the alleged behavior happening behind her back told a very different story. It looked like she was fighting to protect something that the other person wasn't even attempting to preserve. Once that contrast became obvious, public sympathy began to shift almost instantly. The betrayal cut deeper because the women allegedly involved weren't strangers. They were people Remy knew, people who shared spaces with her, worked alongside her, smiled in her face. That kind of familiarity turns cheating into something much more cruel. It's not just secrecy, it's deception layered with proximity. The idea that Remy would react strongly if she ever found out wasn't framed as insecurity, but as a completely human response to being disrespected openly and deliberately. As the story unfolded, it became clearer that Eazy's silence was speaking for him. By not denying the allegations and allegedly continuing his behavior without hesitation, he appeared to be signaling that loyalty wasn't something he felt bound to. That whatever existed publicly didn't require accountability privately. For someone in Remy's position, realizing that the commitment was one-sided is a devastating kind of clarity. People began replaying old interviews, rewatching clips, dissecting moments that once felt confident or playful. Now, those same moments looked strained, defensive. Almost like overcompensation. What once sounded romantic started to feel like someone trying too hard to convince both themselves and the audience. The narrative quietly shifted from strong couple to uneven devotion, and once that perception settles in, it rarely reverses. At that point, the conversation moved beyond gossip and into something more uncomfortable: patterns. Patterns of disrespect. Patterns of silence. Patterns of someone benefiting from proximity to a powerful woman while allegedly betraying her in private. Whether every claim is true or not, the public damage was already done. Once trust fractures in front of an audience, it rarely heals completely. And as the rumors continued to swirl, Eazy's lack of response made one thing painfully obvious to those watching closely: he was moving like loyalty was optional and consequences were someone else's burden. Remy, unsurprisingly, isn't happy, and that feeling didn't come out of nowhere. It's been sitting with her, heavy and unresolved, because she understands better than most how unforgiving the hip-hop world can be when it senses vulnerability. Especially from a woman whose entire legacy is built on toughness, resilience, and never letting anyone see her crack. If she even considers speaking publicly, she already knows what awaits her: jokes, memes, think pieces, and endless mockery. There would be no grace, no space to heal, just a crowd ready to clown her for trusting the wrong person. And that's the deepest wound of all. Not just the betrayal, but knowing that if she opens her mouth, the world won't hear hurt, they'll hear weakness. She's fully aware of how fast the narrative would flip. Instead of focusing on what was done to her, people would ask why she allowed it. They'd question her judgment, her pride, her intelligence. Old lyrics, interviews, and moments would be dragged back out like evidence, used to argue that she should have known better. In hip-hop, reputation is currency, and once you become the joke, it sticks. Remy knows that silence, as painful as it is, feels safer than becoming a permanent punchline in a culture that rarely forgives women for choosing the wrong man. At the same time, there's quiet speculation that Remy and Papoose may be trying to mend things privately. Nothing loud, nothing public, just two people with a long, complicated history seeing if there's anything left to save. Recently, Papoose has been seen around her again, moving like someone attempting to show up, to fix, or at least to try. It's subtle and intentional, as if both of them understand that whatever happens next can't survive the weight of public opinion if it's put on display too soon. Meanwhile, Clarissa appears to be unraveling in the opposite direction, loud, emotional, and increasingly chaotic. The contrast couldn't be sharper. Where Remy is choosing restraint, Clarissa seems to be choosing release. Posting, reacting, responding, letting emotions spill without a filter. It's the kind of visibility that quickly turns empathy into scrutiny. People who once felt sympathy begin to say she's doing too much, exposing herself, losing control. Fair or not, perception hardens fast. And the more Clarissa spirals publicly, the more Remy's silence starts to look calculated, even if it's really about survival. At this point, everyone involved looks bruised. There's no clear villain, no real winner, no neat explanation that ties everything together. Just fractured trust, wounded pride, and too many emotions colliding in full view of the public. Outsiders are watching it like a spectacle, analyzing every move, every appearance, every absence, choosing sides based on fragments and assumptions. But the truth is, no one actually has the full picture. What they see is disorder, and disorder always invites noise. The conversation around Remy hasn't been gentle at all. Even without her saying a word, the verdict from the public feels settled. People are already claiming she lost on every level, that silence won't save her, won't soften the outcome, won't rewrite how they see it. In their eyes, she took the biggest hit. They say she bet on a new beginning, convinced that freedom or excitement waited on the other side, only to discover there was nothing there but cold ground. No comfort. No healing. No peace. Just regret settling in during the quiet hours, when the world goes silent and your mind starts replaying every choice that led you to this moment. There's a very specific ache that comes with realizing you traded something steady for something uncertain, and ended up with neither. What Remy walked away from wasn't fragile or temporary. It was familiar, tested, and proven. Leaving that behind wasn't impulsive, it was a decision weighed with hope. She believed there was something else waiting for her, something brighter, more fulfilling, something that filled the gaps she felt inside. But hindsight has a cruel way of stripping illusions bare. Now the questions creep in uninvited. Was any of it real? Or did it only look better because she was standing far enough away not to see the cracks? Her silence isn't just a strategy, it's survival. Speaking out would mean tearing open wounds she's barely holding together. It would mean reliving moments she's trying to mentally outrun, responding to questions she never agreed to answer. But staying quiet has its own cost. People don't leave silence empty, they fill it with assumptions. Gaps turn into accusations. Distance becomes confirmation. And suddenly, her pain stops being human and turns into a cautionary tale for everyone else. This is what happens when you choose wrong. What makes it heavier is that Remy has never been a stranger to hardship. She's endured things that would have flattened most people. She clawed her way back from places where the odds weren't just low, they were cruel. And because of that history, people expect her to be untouchable, as if resilience in one chapter makes you immune in the next. But strength doesn't erase heartbreak. It just teaches you how to hold it without letting it spill. Then there's the pressure that comes with being a woman in hip-hop, a space that demands armor at all times. She's always had to be sharper, harder, more guarded than everyone else. Vulnerability isn't met with compassion there, it's usually turned into ammunition. So every instinct in her says retreat. Regroup. Handle this the way she's handled everything else, off-camera, controlled, without handing the public a front-row seat to her pain. That choice might protect her image, but it also isolates her in ways few people acknowledge. Watching Clarissa unravel publicly only reinforces Remy's decision to stay quiet, even if that silence is being mistaken for defeat. She understands how unforgiving the internet can be once emotions spill over. Screenshots turn into proof. Impulsive reactions become permanent artifacts. Nothing disappears. Clarissa's breakdown is being dissected frame by frame, stripped of nuance, recycled into jokes and commentary. It's messy, relentless, and merciless. Remy wants no part of that, especially not while she's already carrying enough. Still, the truth remains uncomfortable. No matter how carefully she moves, the narrative has already hardened. Opinions are locked in. Some people pity her. Others criticize her. And some are simply entertained by watching someone fall. In their minds, she walked away from certainty and paid the price. And that loss feels heavier because it happened in public, because it clashes with the image she spent years building, and because it forces a reality most people hate to admit. Sometimes even the strongest people make choices that lead straight to disappointment. The saying, "the grass is greener on the other side," sounds comforting, optimistic, even, but it usually leaves out the most important part. That green often exists only at a distance, shaped by frustration and imagination. When you finally step onto it, the color fades quickly. What looked soft from afar turns out to be hard, flat, and unforgiving. Cement doesn't grow anything. It doesn't give. And the longer you stand there, the more you realize how much you took real softness for granted. That's a lesson Remy seems to be learning in real time. Not through dramatic interviews or public confessions, but in the quiet, through absence, reflection, and the slow understanding that some choices don't come with a reset button. No matter how things shake out from here, whether she and Papoose ever truly find their way back to each other, or whether Clarissa finds stability again, this situation has already left its mark. Trust has been rattled. Perceptions have shifted. Certain doors are closed for good. Nothing will ever look exactly the way it once did. And maybe the biggest loss isn't public opinion or reputation at all. Maybe it's the private realization that walking away from something solid in search of something better doesn't always lead to freedom. Sometimes it leads straight into regret. And regret doesn't always scream. Sometimes it just sits there, quiet, heavy, impossible to ignore, reminding you that not every risk pays off, and not every silence shields you from reality. Now, personally, I can't say I feel bad for her. Word on the street is that Remy turned herself into the headline act in what feels like a real-life remake of How to Lose Your King for the Butler. In battle rap culture especially, that kind of move doesn't fade, it sticks. She didn't just fumble a relationship, she handed critics a punchline that might follow her forever. But that's just one perspective. What do you think about Remy and Eazy's relationship falling apart? Was it inevitable, or just another case of bad decisions colliding in public? Sound off in the comments, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll catch you in the next video.